All right, my name is Jason Kreider, part of Davies Imaging Group, one of the photographers here. Accidentally clicking buttons, so I'll go backwards. Getting started, my presentation here is going to be 5 ways that we utilize camera height in architecture and interior photography to help make better images. What does that mean? Really quickly, getting started on the presentation, I took a look at Google and some Facebook groups and things that I'm a part of to see what other people in the industry, experts or people that are photographers, say about camera height. And when you do that, you'll find all kinds of random suggestions like between 36 and 48 inches off the floor at eye level, chest height, light switch height, bottom of cabinet height, things like that. And all of those, while they can be right, they can be chosen for different reasons depending on the situation. So I found on Petapixel in one of my searches, photographer A. Small Elkin said, the tripod does not determine the camera height, but the photographer's vision for the image. What does that mean? So each composition is very unique depending what we're looking at. We can do different things with the camera height and composition to help illustrate symmetry, highlight different details in the scene, create balance for a building or space if it's very large or very small. Different terrain, rooftop garden, here's an example. You can only see that from a bird's eye view, so I shot that with my drone. And then different features that we want to highlight, whether it be seating areas, dining areas, pools, fireplaces, things like that. My goal is to give you just a little bit of insight of what it is that we're doing. A lot of times people see the photographer, we come on site, we start looking around, doing like this, standing on top of things, jumping on trash cans. What are we looking at? What are we doing? So we're trying to find sometimes the camera height, sometimes the composition, and a combination of both, because they both go together. So I'm going to illustrate a few reasons why. First, this is a great use of symmetry. This camera height was used, we're looking right above this feature here, which allows us to see directly through the scene. It's balanced between the top and the bottom of the image, and it allows space between the front, the middle, and the back area so we don't get what's called stacking or convergence. If all those are layered up, then we don't get a lot of depth in the image and it feels kind of flat. So the camera height here specifically allows us to see through the image and all the different elements that we're looking at. This image, symmetry as well, shows the building from a unique angle. There's no way to get this without a drone. I'm about 35 feet above the ground, which gives us a really cool view into the building, which the architects I shot this for, the design group, designed all the interior spaces here. So this was a shot for them so they could specifically show off their work and the unique features of this north-facing window that encompasses the whole front elevation. Also allows for great views of R Street. They're going to be doing concerts and things here on these walkways. By being high, we also get to see into these walkways, and it creates a little bit of depth. We can see into here and how the space is activated and utilized by people. If we were lower, all that would kind of flatten out and we would only see the building. So while we get symmetry, we also get depth and a lot more information that can be useful to the viewer or the client. Here, same thing. We have a symmetrical building. It's about 4 or 5 stories high, and we have landscaping. So with this shot, I wanted to show the symmetry as well as the landscaping. So I chose to go extra high so we could see over these trees here. If I was more at the level of the bridge here, we'd be trying to look directly at through the trees, and we wouldn't get to see the building or the different design elements that are there. This is a unique shot. I call it more of an abstract shot or a design type shot. With this image, we were trying to highlight these straw bale walls, the curves, and also the play between the windows inside and outside. This is unique because the camera was actually about 6 feet off or 6 inches off the ground looking straight up. We couldn't get that from any other vantage point. Shot from my drone about 350 feet above ground level, and it gives us a unique abstract kind of design look at the landscaping and the different shapes that they used. This, again, wouldn't be possible from any other height. In addition to symmetry and balance, we can use it to help avoid things like distortion. So I'm calling that balance because, as you can see over here, this image was shot from street level, and when we look up at it, the building starts to kind of get peaky here, and the front looks much, much larger than the back. Here, about 45, 50 feet up, maybe third or fourth floor from my drone, it gives us a more balanced or natural look to the building. So we actually see what the true proportions and sizing of everything is, as well as being able to highlight this top feature that's very unique to this building. This view here gives us a little bit more information. We're able to see some of the seating areas for their dining and things, a playground area for the kids, as well as their shipping docks. So from a design or architectural standpoint, this shows a lot of the design that was intended from the architect in one image, to where this is a little bit more limited. Here's another example. This is 16th and J downtown. The camera height here, again with my drone, was used to put us up at a level where we can get the true shape and dimensions of the building. Shot from ground level, you see it feels very tall and peaky on the top, when it's really very rectangular and kind of a square. In addition, we get to see into some of the little special feature areas like this that are not as visible from ground level. But this is a very unique angle, again, shot from my drone because it's such a large building in a very confined space. There's not a lot of places that you can put your camera and get a great undistorted view of it. So this is an example I found on Google. It's kind of street view where you can see walking, and you notice you don't get any of the stairs leading up to it, and it kind of just elongates and feels kind of thin. Here, we still lose the stairs, but we're able to see the building, the different pieces of it, and the depth. It adds a lot. Not possible from any other height. Shot at ground level, we see the building, but it's very peaky on the top. It looks a little bit narrow and very pointy, when it's really not. It's quite square and symmetrical, and in addition to giving us a better balance and distortion-free view, it also places it in the city and just makes for a much more interesting picture to look at. In addition to the balance and symmetry, we can use camera height to show different things. This is the landscaping of that same building, CalPERS, and Sacramento is known as the city of trees, so I like this shot because it kind of shows the relationship between the landscaping design and the area that it was put in, just to show that relationship. Another unique angle, I wanted to show that it was in Sacramento with the skyline, so I pulled back a little bit. Again, we're probably at about 120 to 220 feet, give or take. This shot, if I remember right, was about 15 to 17 feet off the ground. We had a huge ladder and we were at the very top of it. So here, we're able to see some of the landscaping design, all of the pool space, little seating areas, some of the cabanas on the right, and we're also able to see into the clubhouse. If we were lower, everything would kind of flatten out. We wouldn't be able to see the pool, and we would lose a lot of depth. It would pretty much be just the foreground, and then the building and everything in between would kind of disappear. This one, different. Camera height was used to show our street corridor. Our street corridor is this whole street right here. It's a new anchor for Sacramento with a lot of interest, and I wanted to place it in Sacramento and show people the relation of where it is in relation to the downtown area. It's pretty close, and I think this shot does a great job of showing all of that. Again, if we were lower, we definitely wouldn't see all of this information and have no way to put it there. This shows the symmetry. It focuses our attention on the features here, the seating area with the fire pit and the waterfall, and then we have symmetry. What's important about this camera height, it lets us look into the image as opposed to down on the image. And right back here is kind of the bathroom areas for the pool area, and there's some showers there. If we were taller, you would start to see more of that and it would become distracting. So by having a low camera height here, it really focuses our attention on just this feature set, and that's where we want your eyes to look. The feature here I'm showing is kind of this wall here with the fireplace, but I wanted to balance the other design elements. the textured walls, the beams, and the seating area, because that's where we're at. So you can see I started here a little bit lower, but when I was lower, I wasn't getting any of the beams, and I was getting too much couch. So I raised up to balance and get just a little bit of the couch, a little bit of the beams, and really focus on that so you could see over things without this going right into the middle of the fireplace. So it makes everything just a lot cleaner and more balanced for the viewer to look through. If we look at this very, very closely, you can tell on this back ridge that I'm perfectly level with that there. For this next shot, I go a little bit lower. And the reason I go lower is I don't want to see too much of this table. I want to see the foreground here, which is the living room, this little eating area, and back into the backyard. I wanted to show a little bit of the table so we're not looking at a flat edge, but I wanted to see through so we get all of those elements. And we can also see this dining area over here, which is a nice touch as well. Or we'll just say the scene dictated the camera height on this one. We're right above a wall here, and we're placed between, I guess, the overhang, or the framing of the overhang. If we go up too much higher, the overhang is really going to be very prominent in the image, and we don't need too much of that. We just want to show that it's there. So this lets us look over the wall, which is a major feature, into the seating area. We get a little bit of the pool, and we can show the depth in the back, that it goes far back and there's additional seating, as well as being able to see into the house. So this camera height lets us see everything that we need to see, and everything that the client wants to see and show in their photos. If we were lower, these things would start to stack, and we wouldn't be able to see into the kitchen as well. We would just basically see into the back of these chairs, and then it would stop, and we wouldn't be able to see into the pool. Here's another example of highlighting features. This one was chosen. We have a couple things going on. We have multiple seating areas with adjoining spaces, and we also have a tall building. So we want to be high enough to where the building is not getting distorted and elongated due to the lens. But we also want to create a little bit of visual space so our eye can travel through the image freely. Here you can see there's a little bit of walking area here that creates space, and a little bit through here, and it's nice and clean through there. What that does is just really create sections so the viewer can see that there's different sections and there's different places within that image, and they're not all just kind of blended in together. This furniture is very, very low. Standard window height is going to be about here, and this furniture was well below it. So I had to go, I think my camera height was about 1.5 feet to 2 feet to give us more of a sense of presence. If we're higher, or if we're too high and we're looking down on something, it just doesn't have the same feel. So, some other things. You can see right here, we have a very small space that allows separation between the areas. And if we were lower, the chairs would stack up and converge, and it just doesn't make for as clean of an image. So that's why we chose that. It also allows us to see a little bit back behind the island into the different areas and see some of those features as well. Sight lines, converging, stacking. We're able to see the really cool rock fireplace, the barbecue, the seating, and into the kitchen. Where again, if we lower, things kind of level out and they stack up, you don't get to see it as much. This is a very large room. I wanted to highlight the space that was above, as well as show separation and depth between the different islands. These are extremely large islands, and if we get too low, we lose this gap here, and they start to just look like one. So I wanted to make sure that we could see that there was two. All right, so far I've shown you why we picked different places or different camera heights for the shots that we took. Here I want to show a little bit of or illustrate a little bit of some of the considerations that we're making when determining what that camera height will be. Again, it really just depends on our vision for the shot, who it's for, and what we want the viewer to look at. Here is the ice blocks here on R Street in Sacramento. This first shot, this is kind of like my behind the scenes shot, and this is the final image. This is about 2.5, 3 feet off the ground. You notice we're very close to the road, and our vision kind of goes straight over, right to the Shake Shack. The second shot is a little bit higher, above head height, eye level, give or take, and it gives us more of a feeling of what it might be like if you were walking by, right? With that, giving the perspective of what it would be like when you're there is great, but it does introduce a couple of things that could be distracting. Specifically manhole covers, stop signs, or street signage things like that. So here's that first one, and you notice how those are much more minimized. And you look straight at the Shake Shack and the architecture. As we go up, that changes. With that negative, there are some positives. Here, we kind of look right at this level. We're just above this, and there's not a lot of depth there. As we go up, it adds a little bit more depth and space to it, which just is a little bit more dynamic for the image, is a little bit more interesting. But we do have these other things to contend with. Sometimes we'll just remove those in Photoshop, so it's something that we don't see, but it really just depends. Higher than that, we get up to about the 10 to 13 foot range, and it's a drastically different view. Here's the first one again. Notice we're looking over the street, straight into the Shake Shack. Here, we start to see a lot more of the street and some distractions, the signage, potholes, things like that. And also, we see the roof line of the apartments in the back. In the first shot, that kind of disappears, and we can't tell what this is. So let me take a step back. Why is that important? The developer that built this built out all of this whole entire section. So they own the buildings here, which is retail space, this building, and the ones in the back. They might not own it, but they built it. As we go higher, it shows more depth and adds separation between the first building and the second, as well as gives us a little bit of look into here and feels a little bit more lively. Which one is right? It really just depends on what your intention for the photo is and what you want to show. To the right of this, there's not a lot of obstructions from the roads. We can see the building, but notice that we're looking up at the building. And that introduces a little bit, or it's really just not the best perspective to get the building in its true shape and form. So across the street is a parking structure. This is about the 4th floor, standing on an overhang, and it gives us a completely different view of it. It's less peaky at the top. This is much more true to shape, but we see a lot more of the road in here, which can be very distracting. And we're also above the awnings and overhang. So I had another slide. I was actually on the 2nd floor. From the 2nd floor, we get pretty much this same view, but we're more even with this. Is it better or worse? It really depends. That's it in a nutshell. Basically, a couple ways that camera height helps us with architecture and interior photographies is it helps us create balance or symmetry. We can find abstract or unique angles that highlight different elements for different purposes. We can find balance with tall shapes and structures and avoid distortions. We can highlight different landscaping or terrain features to show the entirety of an area instead of one specific feature. Or we can focus your attention specifically where we want it to be and avoid problem areas, distractions like the manhole covers, the potholes, things like that, stacking and converging. That's basically what we're doing when we're out there looking around, climbing on things, bringing ladders and things like that. Any questions?